Your Pharmacy Career Podcast, proudly brought to you by Ravens Recruitment, Australia's pharmacy recruitment agency, spotlights the myriad of career paths available to pharmacists. Your host, Christy Lee Patterson, and her esteemed guests will be sharing invaluable career advice that you can implement at any stage of your career journey.
Welcome to your Pharmacy Career Podcast. I'm your host, Christy Lee Patterson. Today we have two remarkable guests, Montana Grenfell and Max Mito. Montana is a seasoned community pharmacist with over a decade of experience and now serving as the Chief of Staff at StrongRoom AI. Max, on the other hand, is a serial entrepreneur and the co-founder of StrongRoom AI, revolutionizing drug management solutions through technology. Montana and Max, welcome to the show and thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having us, Christy Lee.
Thank you. So my first question, I might pass it over to you, Montana, as our resident pharmacist at StrongRoom. Montana, could you share with us your journey as a community pharmacist and how you managed to transition that into your current role at StrongRoom AI?
Sure. Thank you, Christy, for having us. I began my journey as an intern pharmacist at Chemist Discount Centre in Mornington, gained really essential hands-on experience there, but actually started out with Prime Pharmacy Group before then when I was much younger, so virtually grew up in pharmacy from a very early age. I then went on to become pharmacist in charge at Advantage Pharmacy and managed the operations and ensuring patient care there. Then I transitioned into pharmacist support manager. I provided support and implemented training programs and policies and procedures, and then went on to be operations manager at Advantage Pharmacy and for Chemist Discount Centre. I focused on enhancing efficiencies and strategic initiatives within that role and for those two banners. Then in May last year, I transitioned over to StrongRoom AI as Chief of Staff, and I now oversee the daily operations and collaborate with senior management, drive efficiencies and productivity. My focus is really much on the process of improvement, organisation developments, and those types of aspects within the business at StrongRoom AI.
Wow, what a mouthful. I was going to ask you what a Chief of Staff does, but you answered that already, which is great because I think a lot of pharmacists probably wouldn't really know what a Chief of Staff even does every day.
It's a very unique role, cross between a lot of the operations and business sides of things, but also you've got that human element with your staff. So that's really important. And it's a major focus that StrongRoom AI has. So that was sort of the involvement of my position and why Max and Chris got me to come across.
Amazing. Well, yeah, that's a good segue over to you, Max. So what inspired you to become an entrepreneur at such a young age, and how on earth did that lead you to founding StrongRoom AI and getting into the pharmacy space?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Growing up, I've always wanted to make a really big impact before I die, effectively. Sorry, getting a little bit deep, but I've always, at the time, I remember thinking about whether that would be done working within an organization or doing it myself. And I saw that as I was growing up, the ones that were making the most impact were the ones that were creating solutions for, I guess, the biggest problems. So the way that we came across the problem of medication management in StrongRoom as a whole was initially really wanting to use facial recognition to match with people's medical records as an initial point in time. And we thought that would really solve is the ability to connect people to make sure that they would get the right treatment at the right time with the right data. So that was really our first idea within the medical space. And just keep in mind, we were second year university students, with my background being in economics and history. And then my other co-founders are more from a traditional tech, computer science background. And we were quite surprised as we were going through it that there was still a large amount of paper being used across the industry. And what really surprised us even more was that within medication management in particular, that was still being done on paper within elderly care facilities, private hospitals, and obviously everything is still very fragmented even today. So we decided that we would change projects from that initial idea to where StrongRoom really is today. And so that's really how we came into the medication management landscape and started off with methadone, or I guess opioid replacement therapy as a software, but now we've got, solutions across a lot of different verticals. So,
Yeah, you're right. As someone that's been in healthcare for so long, basically my whole adult life, when outsiders, I don't want to call you an outsider, Max, but when you're not in it,
I am, yes.
people don't realize how much paper is still floating around. But you guys are making less paper float around, which is great. But yeah, it is kind of eye-opening when I go to, say, other events or speak to people in other industries, and they make jokes about, I haven't seen a fax since the 1900s. I'm like, we still have one in our pharmacy. This is a bit awkward.
Yeah,
Yeah. I think, Max, I'd love to ask you a question now that kind of ties in from what you were talking about with the medication management and how you've transitioned StrongRoom to be so much more than just that opioid replacement therapy product. With modern pharmacy practice, it's changing a lot. In Montana, I'm sure you've got quite a big insight of this and probably in Max's ears about what's coming. What can you tell us about the role of technology, Max, that you see in modern pharmacy practice, and how is StrongRoom AI going to make an impact in there?
Yeah, so it's a really good question. So I think that still, and StrongRoom, we're working as quickly as we can alongside other providers that are also innovative in the space. But obviously pharmacy is the role within the communities are expanding quite rapidly, and we're seeing that globally as well. So within the UK, they've now got pharmacy first programs, which is pretty similar to the Australian expanding scope of practice. And you're seeing similar sort of things in Canada as well as in the US as well. I think what's really important with technology solutions as healthcare is shifting is to remain dynamic and agile, but also keeping in mind that it needs to be very workflow friendly, which is incredibly important to adoption. But it also needs to keep in mind that pharmacies are also a business that needs to remain profitable. So keeping those different criteria in mind, StrongRoom, I think, really just where we see our roles playing and evolving is to be providing that technical infrastructure where in 10 years' time, if I look back and see if we've succeeded on our mission, it would be to make sure that independent pharmacies have the same levels of efficiency as a chemist warehouse, but we can also provide ways for automation for different lines of revenue that comes with servicing patients as well.
Absolutely. I totally agree. And Montana, my question for you is, why do you think it's important for tech companies like StrongRoom to have pharmacists on staff, and what value do you bring to the team? Which I think, just hearing what Max said just then about the future of technology in pharmacy, it seems pretty obvious to me, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, there's a couple of different ways to answer that question. I think pharmacists bring crucial healthcare expertise, a patient-centric perspective, and the regulatory knowledge to tech companies like StrongRoom AI. We enhance the interdisciplinary collaboration, the cross-collaboration between what actually happens on the ground and what happens with the tech teams. And we ensure products are clinically sound, user-friendly. They work for a dispensary, they work for a pharmacy, they work for countries that using the platform. I think the background that a pharmacist provides is really important. So if a pharmacist like myself, I specialize in the operational management and those types of aspects. So that helps drive the way that the technology is built with efficiencies, optimizing processes, aligning solutions with the real world healthcare needs that are required. And ultimately, we bridge that gap between healthcare and tech. And that's really important. And I think getting more pharmacies in roles in the technology that actually then pharmacists use is so important, because StrongRoom, we're building products for pharmacists to use. So why not have their input from the start? Because then the output is what is required. And I think from a StrongRoom AI value, mission, and the morals of the company, that's what really is the essence of it, because they actually take the input and make sure that it's actually in the product that we push out to the customers.
I think you worded that so brilliantly, Montana, and it almost, it seems obvious. You would think that more tech companies that have products in healthcare would have people on their teams that are in healthcare or even advisors, and some of them don't, which seems a bit wild. But I really love the approach that you guys are taking. And I think you're right. Pharmacists, we have really good translatable skills. So yes, we've got that technical knowledge, but we're able to translate complicated information into a language that's easy to understand. And my limited knowledge of technology and data, I think it's almost like doing the same thing, even though you're not translating information around counselling, but you're translating that tech information into a usable product for the end user.
Yeah, and I also think the way in which pharmacists are positioned as a healthcare clinician, we also have the knowledge of a business acumen as well, the organisation and how it flows, like the day-to-day operations is really taken into account in the way the tech teams here build those products, and that makes them user-friendly on the ground.
Absolutely. And Max, I know you're a big believer in having really great people on your team. And I know Montana's not the only pharmacist on your team. So obviously you see the value that pharmacists and people with different diverse experiences bring to your team.
Yeah, definitely. I think that I've come to appreciate what a unique role that pharmacists play and the characteristics that's required to be a good pharmacist as well. It's not just, again, from a public perception, not just someone that is filling scripts all day, but effectively they have to have the people skills, especially if they work within community pharmacy in particular. They are dealing with more and more complicated, I would say, medication treatment schedules. So as a result of that, they've got to analyze information quickly, make decisions quickly. And that really relates to how we work as an organization as well, where we do want people to be able to make decisions quickly. We do want them to be able to synthesize data in a way that makes sense and also be able to collaborate with others, which is very, very important as well. So I think as of right now, 1/3 of our team are pharmacists, and actually the majority within product and customer success is also pharmacists. In fact, I think there's only 1 or 2 of them who aren't, and one of them who isn't actually grew up in community pharmacy, and he was able to come on board, unfortunately, before he could even get to uni. So yeah, take that as you will. Yeah.
Fortunately for him, or for you maybe, fortunately for you, unfortunate for him.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, we've talked a lot about the success and career transitions of both of you to get to where you are today, but I guess the thing with success, there's always challenges and things that you need to overcome in your careers. And I'm sure both of you have had different experiences. Montana, I'd like to hear if you've experienced any significant challenges in your career and how did you overcome those challenges?
I think I'll answer the question this way. The first point that I'd really like to hit on is, as you and I both know as pharmacists, Christy Lee, when you work in pharmacy and you do for a long period of time and from a very early age, you realise that we have a fragmented healthcare system, and that really hits home. And because a lot of pharmacists actually have the empathy and the compassion for their community and for their wider population, that's pretty much the first significant challenge I came up against, because it's a bigger one. It's something that in some ways is not in your control, and you have to be able to, when you feel so much for your community, you really want to help. And that's what majority of pharmacists want to do. So I would say encountering that firsthand of like the lack of coordination, the inconsistent information, the inefficiencies that are existing between different platforms, the patient confusion that occurs, the poor patient education that is sometimes there with different patient cohorts, and the disparity in care that can occur is really unfortunate, and it's something that you want to do something about. And that's a really big challenge because it's never ending, and you need to go about finding ways to find solutions for it or have an impact in a way that you would like to ensure that you feel like you're doing something for your community in a positive manner. So I think in my transition to StrongRoom AI, I was able to really feel like I was empowered to help in that environment and do something about, developing care coordination programs and promoting patient-centered care and positive outcomes for patients through a technology platform that could reach thousands of people in an instant, and that allowed pharmacists to really expand the way that they could communicate with their patients. And it really gives that comprehensive care, because not always is your patient in the pharmacy. So for me, it was really important to find a way that as a pharmacist, I could help other pharmacists find ways to communicate with their patient, provide additional patient education and healthcare through a different stream that may not have been conventional when we first started out, but through the products that are being built in the technology area, that we can actually help to coordinate that and provide another level of care to patients that doesn't currently exist.
I think you've answered that really, really well. And I can definitely relate to some of those frustrations that you were talking about. I know probably every pharmacist listening has experienced that. But what I love with what you did is, rather than just seeing this as this is just the way it is and we just have to deal with it, it's okay, well, how can I get involved in something that is trying to change this? It doesn't have to be like this. And yeah, I don't know how many times I've been in pharmacies on a weekend or a Friday night, and you've got people being discharged from hospital or in and out of the aged care home. And it's an absolute mess, and it's health that really shouldn't be like this. So I think, I can really see the passion that's coming through the way you speak about this, Montana, which I think is amazing. And I think at the end of the day, most people that become pharmacists, it's because they want to help. And for people that are listening, I think if you're able to get into roles similar to what Montana is in, you can have that influence on such a wider scale rather than just the people in front of you, which is still really, really quite rewarding and very, very important. But you can have that wider influence and try and drive change that way.
Like, if we all come together for the greater good, because that's what we do as pharmacists, and that's the way that we go about sharing information even, and why we have so many associations, and why we're mostly, everybody's connected to each other and we all know each other inside of the industry. But it's ultimately to streamline the care for the patients and to really have that improved patient health outcomes on a wider scale. And I think with the different avenues and technology stacks that are being built and products that are now available, like at the heart of it for Max and Chris and what they've developed here, it really is with the thought of improving it en masse. And that's what I think is really important about in the communication of getting what we can do out on a wider scale for pharmacies and healthcare clinicians, because we can all do that 1%, and compounded, that makes a huge difference.
Too right. And so, Max, I'm sure you've probably experienced your own challenges, or you mentioned earlier the frustrations that you saw early on when you saw healthcare using a lot of paper. And so, can you share maybe some of the challenges you've seen and what you've done to overcome those challenges?
Yeah, I mean, as we were sort of talking before the start of a podcast, Cecilia, I think just running a business in general, any business is always challenging. And starting a new one is also can be difficult at times. Like with any business, StrongRoom goes through its ups and downs. I think for sure the struggles of starting a company, there's challenges when things are slow, and then there's always challenges when things go right as well and you're growing very quickly. So last year we had a really great year, but I think we grew a little bit too quickly than what we were expecting, which was a good problem to have on the surface, but we also learned some quite painful experiences from that. So we've always prided ourselves on having great customer service as an example towards it. And for about 3 months last year, it was just not at the level that it should have been. And that hurt me personally a lot, that you do go through emotions like you've disappointed your customers who've taken a chance on you, or you might feel some senses like a little bit of shame as a result of that as well. But it's always important to have that level of tenacity, I think, to just keep working through those problems day in, day out, and just not give up. And that's what's seen us through each problem we come up against. And over time, you become used to it. And in some senses, also enjoy the challenge of it all as well. So, yeah.
I can definitely relate. And I really appreciate your honesty there as well. I know a lot of people listening would definitely be able to relate to that. I think, Yeah, with starting a business, I've done the same thing. And I like the way that you said growing quickly was a great problem to have. And it is actually a problem, and no one really can prepare you for it. You can have all your forecasts and plans, and yeah, it's great when it's busy and the work's coming in. But then it does also can cause some problems as well. And sometimes you've got to make decisions and prioritize things. And that means that you're going to drop the ball somewhere else. And so I think I can hear that from what you were saying, that customer service piece. And I think because it's something that you've created, it's a piece of you, right? And people, and especially when you pride yourself in the people part and that customer service, and it can be hard not to take it personally as well, I think.
Yeah, there's also around that as well. Because we haven't had we've never been an executive of a prior business before that's come in the same way that StrongRoom has. It also means that we're also learning everything ourselves as we go. And there was an interesting quote I saw, and it could just be on like one of those silly Instagram motivation things as you're going through reels or whatever. But there was something that was saying, like, you have to grow personally at 200% in terms of capabilities in order to grow 100% year on year as a business. And that's something I've sort of thought about a little bit more. So for the first time this year, I had like an executive coach that just helped me through how I'm communicating. But to be honest, this is where I also want to get really great people on board, like Montana as well. Mm-hmm. I learn a lot from them as well. So they sort of come in as like a semi-coach to myself as well. So, and I think that's just the power of being able to bring really great people on board. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's almost especially when you're starting something from scratch, you have to do basically everything yourself, right? And then as you're getting bigger, you need to bring other people in, and it's that trust, having people around you that you trust, that you know are going to get the job done and do it to your standard. And there's pharmacists listening that are maybe business owners. It's no different to what Max's experience. It's still a business as well. And you need to be able to have good people around you that you know can catch the ball when you need to go and do something else.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I guess now I probably, still keeping on the theme of challenges and opportunities, I'd probably would like to know what, both of your thoughts are around maybe what are the biggest challenges in the pharmacy profession. We've talked about some of them already, but they are actually really big opportunities for companies such as StrongRoom AI, where through the use of technology, we can actually overcome a lot of these problems. So is there anything that maybe we haven't spoken about that you've seen as a challenge and something that technology can improve upon?
So on my end, we've been looking at the power of data quite closely. And I think that there's good instances of data being used appropriately. And then there's obviously negative effects of that for the pharmacy industry. And I think this is something that pharmacy owners probably need to just become a little bit more cognizant of. And it is a very hard process to educate yourself on for something that seems incredibly foreign. I think in the US, unfortunately, you're seeing PBMs come up a lot in the headlines about the role that they play. They take pharmacies' data and then obviously to process the different scripts, but because of a way that it's all been owned, etc., it provides a very difficult condition for independent pharmacies to exist. But then on the other hand, if you're seeing pharmacies that very much have a good understanding of their data, they can navigate through the opportunities and assess things a lot more acutely. And this is something we're still trying to tackle as a company, is how do we make data accessible, readable, and actionable to pharmacy owners? And we're not quite there yet, but we can definitely see that this is a problem that's coming up. And if people keep ignoring this issue, it's going to provide problems down the road. So yeah, so that's probably on my end. Montana probably has a different answer. Yeah.
Very similarly aligned with and following on from about the data and the AI piece. It's also about how you integrate that into a pharmacy and what that means to a team, what that means to the humans in the team, and how they can actually use the integrated technology in their day-to-day, and how your dispensary technician works with that, your pharmacist works with that, and the pharmacist in charge works with that data and the changes that it makes to their roles. I think that's a really big challenge that will come up about how we actually roll that in and integrate that into the pharmacies and how we get them comfortable with it. So I think that will be a challenge that we will face, but we'll face it together and we'll come up with a solution together, and we'll make sure that is an actionable piece for them that they feel comfortable with and that everybody feels safe to roll along with on a day-to-day basis.
Absolutely. We've been chatting for just over half an hour now. And so I could keep on chatting for probably a couple of hours, and everything that we've talked about, there's been different pieces that I would love to dive into deeper maybe in the future. But bringing it back to our listeners, a lot of them are listening to this podcast because maybe they're wanting to know how to do something different in their career, especially as a pharmacist. And so, Montana, I'd love to know what your practical advice is for pharmacists that are looking to expand their roles outside of that community pharmacy. So you've been there and done that. And maybe some people are just a bit too scared that they don't have the right skill set. So yeah, what's your advice to those pharmacists?
My number one piece would be have confidence in yourself, have confidence in your ability. I didn't necessarily know technology and how to code and all that type of jazz when I came into StrongRoom AI, but you've got to remember that's not the role that you're coming in for. And, you have a different set of skills, and we can apply our skills in tech, in management, in consulting like yourself, Christy Lee, and what you've gone on to do yourself, which is amazing in its own right. You need to interview yourself. Enhancing the healthcare solutions. Most importantly, though, I think we need to make sure that we always maintain our currency, which ensures that we stay up to date with different advancements that are happening in our industry, and also that we continue to drive evidence-based care and drive the innovations that are around us, but also be a sponge, learn, grow, be happy to take on a different education. I sit in rooms with Max and learn so much about how to create a startup and create the technology business that him and Chris have. I sit next to Chris, who's our CTO, and learn so much about technology and why it's built in a certain way and what you can do with it and what it allows different healthcare clinicians to be able to do, from writing a code. You sit with our different development teams and you learn from them. So I think also making sure that you understand that you're not ever going to know it all, but don't make out that you know it all, and go in with an open mind and learn from everybody around you, because you can always be learning new things and be willing to grow and evolve. I think that's a really important piece. But to start out with, have confidence in yourself and have confidence with your skill set, and then take that in and be willing to absorb like a sponge.
Oh, I think that's great advice. And yeah, having confidence in the skills that you do have and not talking them down. I don't know why us as pharmacists like to do that. We try to be pretty humble and modest, which is a good quality to have. But yeah, you do sometimes need to, I guess, toot your own horn a little bit. That's okay. But then you mentioned, being a sponge. And that's something that I do. I find that every interaction I have, no matter who it is, I have the ability to learn something from them. And you never know where that could happen either. It doesn't necessarily have to be a workplace. It could be sitting around having a drink with friends or at a conference. And I think, a lot of great innovations happen from those, just talking to people and listening to their problems, and just willing to learn from other people
and allow yourself to have that experience. Go out, put yourself out there, be in rooms that, you might not feel like you should be there, but be there and learn from that and have conversations with people.
Yes. And it is scary. We're not going to pretend that it's not scary. It's inside we're dying. Not really. But I was just reflecting on a time where just recently I got invited to what was called an executive lunch for C-suites, because now I guess I am a managing director of my own company, and I didn't really look at myself that way. And I'm very comfortable in the pharmacy industry. In this particular lunch, it was actually a tech lunch. And I was the only one there from a healthcare background. And as they were doing the intros, I thought, oh my gosh, what am I doing here? How did I get an invite to this? But then when I mentioned who I was, and they we're all just wanting to understand more about, oh, wow, what are the challenges in healthcare and pharmacy and how can we help? And then they were all very happy to, even some of them I've got their numbers for now, and I've been able to contact them and just ask them on some advice on how to be an executive in my own company. And so that's always nice to be able to, chat to other people that have been there and done it as well. And so, maybe Max, you've probably might have similar advice as well. But for, maybe pharmacists that are wanting to step into ownership, whether that be buying a pharmacy or establishing a new pharmacy or even creating a consulting company like I did. What's your advice for those people?
Yeah, I think it's always really rewarding to step into it. I would say that I have personally benefited from starting it a lot younger, and I don't know how people that do it later on in life, which is a much more common demographic to do it. But if you're young and thinking about it, I would just go straight into it. And similarly to what Montana said as well, I think the world is evolving so quickly, and we only really need to see the last 3 years for that. And so I think it can feel overwhelming at times, but the most important thing I think is to keep reading and keep talking with people that are a lot more talented than yourself, and that will help you make sure that at least you're thinking about things the right way as well. So, and you'll have a support system around you. So, yeah.
Great advice. And when you mentioned about doing it earlier on in life, I still like to think I'm still pretty young at 34.
No.
So I'm just pulling you like it's all good. But
the statistic I had in mind was like most business owners start when they're like in their late 40s.
Yes.
That was, yeah.
No, I knew
you've got one on him now. You've got one on him now.
But do you know what though? Even like in your 30s, and for me, studying the business is, whereas if I'd done it when I was 19, I wouldn't have had a mortgage. I wouldn't have had all these other commitments. I wouldn't have had a stepdaughter. So your level of risk is very different when you're younger. And there's always going to be people that are telling you, oh, but you need to do this first. You need to do this. You need to do whatever. And I love the path that I've taken, and everything that I've done up until this point to start my business has helped me, give me the knowledge to be able to start. Sometimes you just have to start and do it. And so you can put it off and give reasons why. But I think, just to jump in it and give it a go. And what's the worst that could happen? Well, for me, I thought, well, what's the worst that could happen is, oh, well, I have to go back to work as a pharmacist. Well, that's not too bad. I'm still...
And I think that's one of the best things about being a pharmacist, right? I am in many ways jealous of pharmacists because you've always got something to fall back on. Well, unfortunately, with an economics and history degree, there's not too much to fall back on. But so especially with pharmacists, I think you're all in a very privileged position to be in. And nothing in life is as difficult as you think it is, but you just have to keep working at it. That's all. So. Yeah.
At the time when you're in that situation, no matter what it is, it always feels tough. But then it's also good to sit back and kind of reflect on where you are and look back. And I think just in the short time that I've had my business, when I'm thinking, oh, it's not growing as fast as I would like, or I'm not getting the contracts that I thought I'd be getting. But then I look back to where I was just 6 months ago and I thought, oh, actually, I'm doing pretty good. I've actually kicked the goals that I wanted to. So it's good to stop and reflect as well on your achievements, whether that's in your business or just your personal achievements as well. Well, thank you both for the conversation. I've really, really enjoyed it, and I hope everyone listening has as well. Is there any last thoughts or any comments you'd both like to make before we sign off?
No, just thank you so much for having us as well. It was lovely to have a chat with you after, well, I saw your APP, but after working together a couple of years ago. So, yeah.
Yeah. It's always a pleasure speaking to you. And also Montana yourself. I've also had the pleasure to work alongside Montana. And so I'm so proud to see where you are. So well done.
Thank you so much for having us. Thanks for giving us the platform to have a chat.
Thank you. Well, thank you for tuning into Your Pharmacy Career Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring stories and insights into the world of pharmacy. So stay tuned for our next episode.
You've been listening to Your Pharmacy Career Podcast, brought to you by Ravens Recruitment. Don't miss our next episode where we continue to explore the multifaceted world of pharmacy careers. Make sure to subscribe and share.